All right, guys, I wanted to do my best to try to clarify some things about the middle voice. Obviously, you can tell from the video that Bill Mounts did that he's having a hard time explaining it. And so, if you're having a hard time understanding it, you're a good company. I'll try my best to kind of explain some of the main things I want you to know about the middle as we try to learn this. But it may be one of those things like in physics where we have to see it over and over again to kind of get the hang of it. But the main thing I want you to think about, and I didn't feel like the Ancient Greek Alive did a really good job of this, was really just saying a straight definition of a middle voice. And so here is one from Bill Mounts, and it's the action of the verb in the middle voice in some way affects the subject. And so the middle voice is the voice of self-interest. The action of the verb in the middle voice in some way affects the subject. Now, that's different from the passive in the sense that um, in the passive voice, the subject is receiving all of the action, but it's by some unknown agent. We don't know who the agent is. But in the middle voice, the agent of that action is the subject. And so the subject is doing something for him or herself. So for instance, this is an example of that. I wash a cloak for myself. So it's a cloak. I'm washing it, but I'm doing it for the impact that it's going to have on me. If I just said I washed a cloak, it may be for my friend, it may be for my boss. In which case, in that instance, I would use an active voice. But if I washed a cloak for myself, then I would use the middle voice. So I got a couple of examples here I want you to see. The first is an example of an active. I have luo, ton, hippon, altu. So this is clearly active. I wash, and notice this verb has an omega ending. So if you looked up luo, you would look up this word, luo. You wouldn't look up luomai like it's a deponent or anything. These are verbs that have omega endings. So I've got luo, I wash, and it's just a normal active. I'm washing the horse of him, his horse. And so that's just a normal active. Now, if I want to make it a middle, I could say it this way. I wash the horse, or even my horse, for myself. And because we're using this omai ending here, this middle ending, it's clear that the horse is somehow related to me. It's my horse. It's somehow to my benefit to wash the horse. Now, I want to clarify something here that's really pretty tricky. And so your textbook uses in their second example, this is on page 174, they use as an example an action performed on oneself. They use this one, luomai, as in I wash myself. And that's perfectly fine. It's a reasonable way of doing that. But I want to clarify that when we get to passive voice, luomai could also be passive. And in this instance, I am washed by the horse. In this case, hupo is my preposition by, and it's going to take a genitive clause. And so in this instance, the luomai is passive. So you would say, Mr. Diggs, that's confusing. And that's exactly right. It is confusing. And the reason it's confusing is that you can't tell if it's middle or passive unless you have context. And so we haven't quite gotten to passive voice yet, but I wanted you to see that because if you don't have that, then you're going to have a hard time understanding all of it when we put it together. So I just want to clarify that this sentence right here, yes, it could mean I wash myself, but if you saw it by itself, it could mean I am washed. And both of those are perfectly good translations for that. And so don't get confused by that when you see it. Later on, we're dealing with passives. For now, when you get into the work, they're going to try to leave it as just a straight middle, but I just wanted you to be aware of how that works. Okay? So we've got the active here, I wash his horse. This is the middle, I wash my horse for myself. We can tell it's middle because we have the omai ending here, and this is a middle voice. It wouldn't be I am washed by the horse because this horse here is accusative. It couldn't do that. So you're going to have to do a lot of thinking here about the context and about what all the different cases are meaning. This one, luomai, could be I wash myself, or later on we're going to learn it could be I am washed. And in this example, it's completely clear that it's passive. Luamai, hupo to hippo, I am washed by the horse. And when we get to passive, whenever we're going to have lots of this hupos, because remember the passive voice obscures the subject. So if I want to say I am hit, I could leave that like it is and just let the subject, let the agent of being hit be unknown. So I could be hit by my mom or by the dog or whoever, but I wouldn't know unless I added this clause by my mom or by the dog or whatever. So when we get to passive, the hupo is really going to help us out just to kind of see those passives. So let's look at the endings for this. I'm going to erase all this. And let's look at the endings. I'm on page 175, which is lesson 43. And I want to clarify where we are in our chart. So we're here and we're on these ones, which you've learned all along as deponents. But for now, we're going to be learning them as middle and passives because we're at the end of the road here. So this is omatha, this is estha, this is ontai. And then over here we have omain, this is u. Then we have eto, and then this is omatha again. This is estha, and this is onto. All right, so I don't want you to be confused. These over here are going to be your present middles. These over here are going to be your imperfect, or they're going to be your strong aorist endings for your middles. So if we wanted to do for example, the lepomai, I leave my, all right, or I leave for myself, we could do it this way. Lepomai, I leave for myself. That's a present tense, but it's a middle voice. I leave for myself. If I wanted to do imperfect, I could just do this. A lepo main. Now I'm over here because I'm in the imperfect. I would translate this, I was leaving my, or I could say I was leaving for myself. So the same rules that we had before for imperfect are going to work here. I'm still keeping the entire stem. I'm adding my augment and I'm adding the endings. It's just now, instead of being an active idea, it's a middle idea. I was leaving my. I'm going to use these endings if I have a strong aorist, okay? So leave is lepo. The aorist form of that is a lipon, like this, a lipon. This is I left. Well, if I want to do I left my, I'm going to just add this, a lip, o main, I left my. So don't be confused. By any changes in the way the aorist or the imperfect work, they're just like they were before. The difference is now I am not just an action, just doing the action in an active way. I am in this weird middle voice where I'm doing something with an impact on myself. So that leaves one last complication, and that is we talked about strong aorist. We need to talk about the weak aorist, and we've got some new endings to learn here. And if you recall, and hopefully I'm going to raise this up just a little bit. Remember the sa, sas, say, and then this is salmon. You can't see those. I'm going to write it up here. Sa, sas, say, salmon, sata, and san. These are what we would do if we were going to say I hated or I loved or something like that. A weak aorist. Now we always kind of like punted these as we were going along, but now we need to kind of get them. And so this is going to be sa main, and this next one is just so, and this is sato, like this, And then the next one is Samatha. This one is Sasta. And then finally, we've got Santo. All right, so it kind of makes sense. It kind of overlaps with what we had before. The strange one is this so here, because we had omain, u, eto, omatha, esta, onto. You know, we're just replacing the epsilon or omicron with the sa sound, but instead of the u, we've got the so here. And of course, that looks like your future first person singular, but it just is what it is. It'll have an augment, and that's how you'll tell the difference, because there's always going to be an augment there. So when we're doing these, we're not going to be able to use lapomai because it doesn't have it's not a weak aorist. We need a strong aorist. And so I'm going to just tilt this down just a little bit. And so their example is palomai. And so if we wanted to say we stopped our, not my, but we stopped our, or we stopped X for ourselves, then we would do a pal sa me the. We stopped our. We stopped for ourselves. And so it really is, you know, just following the chart and kind of and being careful with it as you go on. The good news is that for these aorists, they're going to have when we get to the passives, they will look different. So the passive aorists, we can tell pretty quickly that they're passive and not middle. So that'll help. Let me give you one example from the Bible, and then I'll stop the video. And this is an example of the middle voice. There are several, of course, but let me go ahead and give you one of those.
Okay, so this is Matthew 27:24, where Pilate is washing his hands. We have ha politos for Pilate, and then having taken water. So labon hudor, having taken water, apa nipsato tas keros. And then aponipto there is the word for wash. And so you can see the pi and the tau are combining with the sigma from the sato ending for the third person singular middle ending. And so it is sato plus the pi and the tau, psato. And so we would translate this: Pilate, having taken water, washed his hands for himself, or perhaps he could say, Pilate washed his own hands, something like that. And so, but in any event, you can see why it's middle. It's Pilate washing his hands. It affects himself. And so Matthew chose to use the middle voice there. All right, hopefully this helps, and we'll continue working on the middle.